Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall,
host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey there, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Glad to have you along today. Thanks a lot for giving this a 5-star review and a written review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you get an opportunity to do it, it's always helpful to the operation here. We're grateful that you do that and let other people know about the podcast. You have helped this thing grow by leaps and bounds with your support over the years. We're so thankful. And we also can't do it without your support of our sponsors. And the fact that we have great sponsors in the podcast means everything to the operation. So if you enjoy listening to the podcast, if you don't mind rating it, and if you don't mind supporting great sponsors like our title sponsor, John Ruhlman. John has been with us now for a few years, and he is absolutely the best when you're looking for the best prices and the best coverage in health insurance. usmedicalplan.com is his website. Now, all you need to do is set aside, let's call it a half an hour. Reach out, usmedicalplan.com, or call 877-410-4321 and tell them what you're paying right now and what you think about your coverage right now. Or maybe you have some questions. You're just not really happy with your current health insurance situation. They'll talk you through your options. And here's the thing. At U.S. Medical Plan, they know 100 different private health insurance companies. So they're going to get you the best possible price and never going to skimp on coverage. I know a lot of people think, well, if it's cheaper, it's not going to be as good a coverage. Not true. In fact, what you'll find when you work with U.S. Medical Plan is oftentimes you're paying more. You're paying much more than you should be for health insurance for not as great a coverage. 877-410-4321 or usmedicalplan.com. I was all over this Signal app thing yesterday. I told you that I wasn't going to hear a bunch of hyperventilating about it. It turns out there was a great deal of it to understand that we didn't yesterday. It turns out that there are still some, it seems, on our side that want to sandbag Mike Walls. I think we're going to have to deal with that. First of all, Fast Eddie, do you think Mike Walls is a bad guy or not? Let's just get this out of the way, because there appear to be, I always like to acknowledge this stuff, and I know it makes some of you in this audience angry, but I like to acknowledge it because I like to acknowledge what's real. And here's what's real. There's a subset, I will say, on social media that thinks Mike Walls is up to no good. And they think his wife is some kind of secret closet lefty because she's involved in some kind of climate stuff. I don't know the woman. I can't vouch for any of this. I'm just saying I started to read this a little bit yesterday in preparation for today's show. People are dubious of Walls, dubious of the wife, think that he's pals with this Goldberg guy at the Atlantic, and didn't really give an adequate explanation as to how this Goldberg guy got into their Signal app conversation. So, question number one, is Mike Walls a bad guy or someone of whom you're suspect?
No, I don't think he's a bad guy. I do not.
And by bad guy, I don't necessarily even mean that he's done anything wrong, but that he is maybe subversive or not all the way MAGA, not pro-Trump 100%. You think there's anything to that?
I don't think there's anything to that, no.
I don't either. I have a hard time with it. I think at this stage in the game, I think Team Trump knows full well who's on their team and who's not. Walls has never conducted himself while he was in Congress as anything but sympathetic to the agenda. I've never seen him behave in the House in any way that would suggest he's not on board the agenda, for want of a better term. If somebody can produce evidence that Mike Walls has been a monkey wrench in previous iterations in the House or whatever, then I'll hear it, but I don't see any evidence of it. But okay, so I need you to understand that's number one. He went on with Laura Ingraham last night, Walls did, and I will say it was weird. The only thing about this Signal thing that I don't get, the only thing I don't understand, and people want to know, is how does this guy, this Goldberg guy at the Atlantic, get included in the chat? That's what people seem to be puzzling over. Walls says, while he's talking to Ingraham last night, and I happened to watch this entire thing, and Ingraham, to her credit, Ingraham really doesn't let up. I'll give her this. Like, she's gotten the exclusives with Trump, and, she's very tight with the Trump White House. But when there's something like this that pops up, they put these guys like Walls on Ingram's show. Ingram's an attorney, all right? And she's tough. I know Ingram a little bit, like personally. This is like one of the toughest people in broadcast journalism, truly. And when something like this is confusing to the American people and causing trouble, and you put somebody like Mike Walls on her show, it gets a little uncomfortable. I was getting a little, I must say for Walls, I was puckering a little bit. She was asking all the right questions, and she kept asking, how does this guy get on your chat? I don't quite understand that. And Walls kind of went over here, and then he kind of went over there, and then she said, yeah, but again, how did he get there? Who was it, a member of your staff? And he would kind of go over here and go over there, and she kept insisting, who put the guy in the chat? Does that matter to you, Ed? Should we get to the bottom of who put the guy in the chat? Because I think that's going to do a lot to quell this whole suspicion of Mike Walls. The reason this snowball is growing, and I bring it up to deal with it, and again, I don't want you to think for a minute that I am making a deal out of this, because yesterday I told you this isn't a deal. The only deal in this for me is trying to get to the... This is much like Pam Bondi, all right? A lot of you reached out to me and said you didn't like Bondi. And then she got confirmed, things got underway, and then her first big rollout was the Epstein file thing, and then a lot of you got mad about Bondi again. And a lot of you are still mad about Bondi, and you don't think she's particularly effective in executing the agenda. And some of you got mad at me for pointing that out. But I tell the truth here. This is a huge audience, and when most of this audience, who I assume is supportive of Donald Trump's presidency, and one of the 77 million people that voted for him, when people start reaching out to me saying they have suspicions of certain members, I take note. Not just one-offs, but when I start to see it becoming a bit of a trend. So I start doing a little investigation for myself, and I listen a little more closely to see, is there anything there? Am I missing something about Walls here? He never really directly answered this. He said, no, it wasn't a staffer. I did it. It was me. I take all the responsibility. To which Laura again pressed, okay, so you put the guy in the chat? He says, no, I don't know the guy. So is that, I don't know, is that too fine a point, or does that point matter? I'm asking, Fast Eddie, because if you say to me, you're the trusted executive producer of the show, if you say it's too fine a point, it doesn't matter, let's move on, I'll drop it. But you get to make the call.
No, I think it's worth investigating. We absolutely must know who put him in the chat. The Atlantic guy, Goldberg. Yeah, that's important. That's very important. So if
Walls says, I take full responsibility, it wasn't me, or he says, I'm not going to pass it off on somebody else, the buck stops with me, is he trying to save some other staffer's bacon? Because he said, I do not know this man. I've never contacted him. I don't talk with him. I don't know who he is. But then in the same interview, he also said, but I'm the one who's responsible for the chat and getting him in there. Those two things just don't wash, do they, Ed?
No.
Am I missing something?
No. That's he could be very well protecting a staffer. Yeah. Which
is noble. I mean, that's noble. I mean, you know, if something happens on the show and it's all G-Love's fault, I can't throw G-Love under the bus. I got to take the responsibility as the host. Name's on the door, right? So maybe that's what Walls is doing. Look, I don't know. My point is, I understand that there are a lot of you that think that this Signal app thing is something subversive. And I'm trying to squash that because I don't think it is. I think that, and Ratliff in a hearing yesterday explained very, very clearly. I don't know if we have Ratliff or not. I'm sorry, I didn't check. Yeah, we do. Okay, here we go. Listen to this. In cut 1187, here is the director of the CIA, John Ratliff, explaining to people what this communication device called Signal is and why they all use it. See if you like this. Take a listen.
So that we're clear, one of the first things that happened when I was confirmed as CIA director was Signal was loaded onto my computer at the CIA, as it is for most CIA officers. One of the things that I was briefed on very early, Senator, was by the CIA records management folks about the use of Signal as a permissible work use. It is. That is a practice that preceded the current administration to the Biden administration.
Okay, now does that help matters at all? Fast Eddie. John Ratliff said, I got to the job, and they said, here, Director Ratliff, is something called Signal. The guys in the Biden administration were using it. You can use this to chat privately and offline with people inside your organization and outside the organization with whom you need to communicate securely. Here's Signal. Director Ratcliffe, enjoy. You just heard his explanation for it. So you can assume that this is the same case with Walls and all the other fellows that use it, true?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So if that's true, then Goldberg's name, could have been preloaded as a contact into it? See, some people were really mad at me yesterday that I was not going hardcore into the theory that somebody framed Walls and this whole team by purposely looping, that like there's an interloper inside Walls' office, purposely, some kind of subversive figure trying to frame all of them by placing Goldberg in this chat, unbeknownst to the rest of them. How plausible is that theory? He didn't subscribe to that. To be clear, Laura Ingraham did float that to him last night, and he said, no, not true. So Walls didn't want to give her an inch on the idea that there were subversives inside his office. I take the responsibility. It's all me. Look, I'm just trying to flush this out because the Democrats have a thing now. They think they've got a thing. And they're like a dog on a bone. In fact, now, Axios reports this morning, Trump officials sued over Signal chat for alleged federal records violations. Now, you just heard Ratliff say, and it's easily proven, that Biden administration officials use Signal. This is well before this administration using it. But, boy, are they trying to make hay while the sun shines. They think they got a thing here. More in a minute. I wasn't kidding. Here's a post on X this morning from Carolyn. Mike Walls is dirty, Stigall. That's it. Period. Full stop. How the app got on the phone, says Jerry, is totally irrelevant. What matters is the reporter was added to the chat and people were saying they have no idea how he got there, which either smacks of a lie or shows significant incompetence. If Mike Walls says he's responsible, then it's his responsibility to answer all the questions. By him saying he's responsible smacks of a cover-up, full stop. Ed, I wasn't wrong. I know this is going to make some of you mad, but this audience is starting to rumble that they think Mike Walls is some kind of problem out there.
And can I offer a counter to that? Can I offer...
Please.
Okay, so here I have another take that's completely different. I think that Mike Waltz is an ambitious guy. He came on the scene very hot in Congress. I think that he got put into a position, this is a very important position for Homeland Security, that is a big one and has a lot of responsibilities. And I just think that he's in over his head. I think that he's not. There are people under him that I know personally that are more experienced than he is. He's an ambitious guy, got called to a big job, and I think that this is just one of what could be a few screw-ups, but I don't think he's nefarious.
So you think then it is some kind of do you think he was set up? Or this was just some kind of... Because here's the thing... Again, I don't mean to belabor this, but it is going to keep going until we deal with it, so we need to flush it out. Because I don't want to be accused of not dealing with this or ignoring something. And when I start hearing people say, Stigall, you're missing it, you won't acknowledge that Mike Walls is dirty, I don't want to be accused of any of that. I'd rather just deal with this stuff head on and put it to bed. Okay, so you say Walls is in over his head. I'll hear that. But that then means that he's got people who did this to him. Someone put this guy in his chat and he didn't know it. Is that what you're saying, you think?
I think that's a possibility. Yes, I don't think that's me personally, but it's a possibility.
As a leader, he's falling on the sword and saying, the buck stops here. It's my responsibility. I'm not going to throw a staffer under the bus for something that is my responsibility to know who was on the chat. That's being a good leader, but that's not telling the whole truth that, in fact, that somebody did, in fact, install this guy in the chat. You think that?
Yes. Yes, I do. It's good.
Okay. So then we get back to there's someone inside the national security team trying to set these people up or help a ne'er-do-well at the Atlantic? Just walking it out. That's all. Trump officials sued over the Signal chat use. I just shared this with you before the break from Axios. Something called American Oversight alleges in its lawsuit the chat on the unclassified commercial app that mistakenly included the Atlantic's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, violated federal records laws. The suit, filed in D.C.'s federal court, names Hegseth and other officials, including the National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard, Ratliff at the CIA, Treasury Secretary Bessent, and Marco Rubio. American Oversight said in a statement they're seeking to recover unlawfully deleted messages and prevent further destruction. Well, you know who has the entirety of these, don't you? This is another component of it that I think is kind of interesting. Yesterday they said there is nothing in this communique back and forth that is classified. They've all said that from the jump. Caroline Leavitt has said it from the White House. Trump has echoed that. The entire team on this chat has all said there is nothing on this chat that was classified. I believe them. All of them, when pressed, though, Democrats think, here's their angle. Here's what they think they've got. Well, then why won't you release them? So, Eddie, let's deal with that. They think there's something sneaky going on because this whole team says there's nothing classified, but they won't release them. Ha-ha! So we've got you. And you say?
I mean, it's up to Jeffrey Goldberg to release them. It's not up to them, right?
First of all, that's exactly right. Jeffrey Goldberg has every word of this, and he could release it all right now. So why doesn't he? How about we ask that question? Why don't you Democrats ask Jeffrey Goldberg to release it all? If, in fact, it's not classified, then he should be able to. Now, Walls and the others say, I don't want it released because I don't want our private communication. Eddie, that would be like you and I. We text every day. We text a lot yesterday. I don't really want every word of that read by other people. Do you?
No, I don't. Of course not.
It's not classified. I just don't want people reading it. And by the way, there is more. And not because I think this is a big scandal, but I do think it's something we need to spend some time with. And I'll spend some more time on it in a minute. Hang on. How do you do? Hope you're doing well. Already middle of the week. I know it's Wednesday because it's trash day at Stately Stigall Manor, and I took it out. Yes, your host takes out the trash every morning before shows like this on Wednesdays. Thank me. 855 Stigall's our telephone number if you want to get in here. Okay, let's go to Mark in Florida. Let's take some pulses out there because a lot of you are still pretty agitated about this whole signal thing. This is not going to be the last hiccup for the Trump administration. And, you know, Trump said yesterday, and I thought it was a good point, look, I've been at this 2 months. We've been cranking pretty hard. This is the first misstep, and I wouldn't exactly call it a huge misstep because we still kicked some Houthi butt. And the operation still went off flawlessly. Unfortunately, there's some hack at the Atlantic that got to read what my guys were talking about. It wasn't particularly consequential. I still stand with my guy. Now, you know my default position here. I trust Trump. And if Trump says yesterday, and he did in this meeting, I stand with Walls. Walls is a good guy. I'm not throwing Walls or any member of my team over. If that's Trump's position, that's my position until proven wrong. That is my official default position. So for those of you that think Mike Walls is some sort of saboteur, I will just say to you this. Donald Trump trusts him implicitly. And if you think that's wrong, then you think Trump's wrong. And you think Trump's getting bad advice again. And I would just say to you, this ain't Trump's first rodeo. I mean, he's been around the block. He's been the subject of this in the first term. So I don't think he suffers fools as easily this time. But that's one man's opinion. All right, so let me get Mark in here in Florida really quick. Mark, I'm glad you called. Thanks for waiting. Good morning.
Morning, Chris. Just a little brain pick here. Is it possible, or would it be considered possible, that this was an intentional distraction to get eyes off of other things that are going on that Trump is doing? Okay, signal, you know, we've all made mistakes on text messages before in groups, but somebody may have done this intentionally to sidetrack a bunch of peers to look other directions for things that are going on. Because right now it's taking a lot of heat off of DOJ, when it's taking a lot of heat off of closing the Department of Education. Could it be possible that this is one of those intentional acts? Just a thought.
Somebody inside Team Trump said, let's give them something to talk about to take their attention away from the real work we're doing over here, is your theory.
That's my theory.
Okay, I'd hear that. Let me ask you this. I'm glad you posited that theory because I lean closer to someone set this up. Now, who that someone is, I don't know. For what reasons, I can't say. Mark says somebody internally gave this story to Goldberg to give them something to talk about, to cause this kerfuffle and cause everybody to look over here and get the Democrats and the media and everybody talking about this signal thing. So Trump and Doge and others can go about their surgical work of cutting and gutting the government and nobody will give them trouble about it. I'll hear it. Let me try this one on for size. By the way, just before we go on, let me get to some of the intel hearing yesterday and what was said about it. Here's what Tulsi, the director of national intelligence, in 1185, here's what she had to say. Nope, sorry, not 11. Pardon me, not that one. Let's go with 1186. Here's what Tulsi said about the communique.
Contact the defense secretary or others after this specific military planning was put out and say, hey, we should be doing this in a skiff?
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then if there was no classified material, share it with the committee. You can't have it both ways. These are important jobs. This is our national security. Bobbing and weaving and trying to, filibuster your answer.
Over at the Breakfast Club, this is where Charlemagne T.H.A. God works, the official show of all of Black America, the Breakfast Club. That's what I'm told. Ever since Hillary packed hot sauce in her purse, if you want to reach Black America, you got to go on the Breakfast Club, apparently. That's quite a bit of power. That's where Charlemagne T.H.A. God hosts, and he's got a team assembled there. And interestingly, Jeffrey Goldberg got booked on that show. Now, Ed, you're a booker. You book guests. Why in the world would a guy like Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic be on the Breakfast Club exactly?
I think I don't know. He was on the Breakfast Club. Let me just look at the visuals.
Oh, he wasn't on it. Okay, I'm sorry. They were talking about him? Is that it? They played a clip of him and they were commenting on it?
Correct, yeah. On the Breakfast Club, DJ Envy was talking about it.
Okay,
Sorry.
good. Because I thought for a minute I'd missed something and Goldberg is now a regular on the Breakfast Club, which would have been... Sorry, that doesn't gel. Oh, that makes more sense. But anyway, listen to the commentary from the team over there at 1181.
If you did get those texts, right, and you know those texts weren't supposed to be to you, why would you put it out there? Like that's what I don't understand. Like, you are a journalist, but this is your country, and releasing some of that stuff can probably or might affect some of the things that happen. Why would you put that out there? Like,
you think I'm gonna sit on that? You know how big of a story that is? That's why you put it out there.
Yeah, but this is your country, and if it could affect military, it could affect people that's out there working.
Nobody cares about that because you have bylines, you want to get the clicks, you want to sensationalize, and in 2025, nobody cares about that.
Don't care about people, huh? They care more about likes and TikTok numbers?
Not even .com numbers, Google Trends. Like, I'm just being real. Like, that's why you put it out there. But also, too, I think, depending on where that journalist sits politically, like, it's kind of like exposing how careless, or I think that's what they were trying to do, exposing how careless an administration could be, which is also dangerous. So maybe that's their way of saying, yo, if I care about my people, like, y'all need to know, y'all president and his administration are accidentally sending something this serious.
Aha. Now, the reason I share that with you is an interesting conversation DJ Envy and Jasmine Crockett were having there. No, I'm sorry, that's not who that was. We'll get to her in a minute as well. But at any rate, isn't it intriguing that a member of the show that speaks to all of Black America said, I think this journalist is kind of a scumbag? Didn't we just have that conversation yesterday? I think that's a very intriguing takeaway. DJ Envy there says Goldberg's sort of a slimy guy. He gets all this information and he sits on it and he writes a story about it. Where's your loyalty to your country? So that would go hand in glove with what Mark just said, that maybe Team Trump framed Goldberg and they wanted to turn this into a story and make Goldberg out to be a bad guy. And by the way, Goldberg says, again, he has all of this conversation, so why doesn't he release it all, right? I asked that question yesterday. It's a wonderful question. Now, about this idea that it was a setup. Could it have been from inside? Maybe. But how about this? This didn't hit me till yesterday, and I really regret it. these hearings, there were two of them, as a matter of fact. I have from The Hill, key takeaways from worldwide threats hearing dominated by signal breach. Key takeaways from worldwide threats hearing dominated by signal breach. Let me read that headline one more time for those of you in the back at The Hill. Key takeaways from worldwide threats hearing dominated by signal breach. And then this one, over at Fox 59, I believe, out of D.C., headline, U.S. intelligence officials to appear at House hearing after Senate grilling over leaked military plan. What am I getting at? Did you think it odd? Because I did, and I didn't put two and two together. Tulsi Gabbard, Ratliff, who else? There were a handful of them. Walls, I think Cash was there. Cash was there too. Did you think it's strange that all these people testified yesterday about this? That fast? Ed, did you think about that at all? Did that occur to you? It didn't me.
Chris, no, I can be honest, not up to this point did I think, the timing on that. No, I didn't. Mm-mm.
I missed it, and I wished I hadn't. I had no idea. Did you know, ladies and gentlemen, and this should matter to all of us, did you know that this House and Senate hearing were both scheduled well in advance as an annual event? Did you know that these hearings are annual events? Class, did you? Your professor didn't know, so I assume a good number of you didn't know. Maybe a lot of you did, and I'm just a dumb guy. I'm willing to wager most of you, like me, had no idea that the Senate Intelligence Committee has an annual worldwide threat hearing every year. Did you know that? I didn't know that. And did you know over on the House side, they have a similar meeting scheduled for their annual review at the same time? Did you know that? You didn't. And as usual, your host is the only one to point this out. I bet virtually no one else has told you this. I didn't know. But I sat around and I thought to myself, how did all of these principals in the Trump administration get summoned this fast to talk about this Signal app thing? I said to myself yesterday, that was weird. And then I learned this was an annual event they were all scheduled to be a part of. And lo and behold, the day before, all of them are scheduled to appear before the House and Senate for an annually scheduled meeting. Kaboom! Mr. Goldberg at The Atlantic writes a big explosive story about the way they communicate on Signal. Now, fast, Eddie. Your witness. Any takeaway from that?
It's quite the coincidence, Chris. Huh.
Yeah.
The timing is very
interesting. So now what does it look like? Now knowing that, now giving that framing to you, now what do you say about what it looks like?
That gives the best example as to how it could be a setup.
Exactly. And I will tell you that we know this is not our first rodeo. We're not kids, okay? We've been around the block a couple of times. We see what this government is capable of doing. Do I believe there are still subversives inside official Washington that mean Trump harm? No good. The Trump administration. I absolutely do. Do I believe this Goldberg is a uniquely bad guy who has been writing uniquely bad things like Donald Trump doesn't like, dead troops, suckers and losers and all that stuff, and that I want my generals to be like Hitler's generals? This Goldberg guy is a uniquely rancid human being. And do I believe that in a vast bureaucracy of Washington government, all of the subversives have been purged, including inside national intelligence? I don't. I believe there's still some bad actors in there that are allied with people like Goldberg. They knew this annual hearing was coming up, and Goldberg drops this bomb before it to get maximum attention drawn and away from the real global threats that exist, that this team has been dealing with very effectively. There you go, folks. Chew on that one for a minute. Nobody else is telling you that, but I'll leave that one with you. Why did a network like CNN, for one of the only times in the entire 2024 campaign, why did they cover the entirety of the Butler rally in Pennsylvania when they dumped out of every other Trump rally? Why was somebody allowed to shoot at Donald Trump from a 150-yard roof? These things don't happen by accident. These things happen on purpose. Now, who you blame, who you pin it on, I don't know. But I think we are all wide awake and understand that there are subversives both inside and outside of government that are constantly looking for ways and opportunities to derail, sidestep, murder even Trump, literally, and his agenda. And when the Elon thing doesn't work, they go in a different direction. There are forces constantly at work trying to find soft targets inside the Trump administration. And to their credit, they are much more buttoned up, but they're not going to catch everything. It's impossible. This Leviathan, known as the American federal government, is epically big. And Trump is smartly, with a team of pretty smart people, trying to block all the exits and plug all the holes, but you're not going to get every one of them. And that town of Washington, D.C. is a cesspool full of people that are shooting at them. And every now and again, somebody's going to get a hit, a direct hit, and this Goldberg has. He gave an interview to somebody called Tim Miller. I had to ask who that was. That's one of the eunuchs over at the Bulwark, apparently, who got the interview. And here's the conversation between Tim Miller and Jeffrey Goldberg. Take a listen. 1200.
Now, the Secretary of Defense and the White House press secretary have said you're lying, have said there are no war plans there, have said there's no classified information. So the obvious question is, shouldn't you now demonstrate it? Shouldn't you publish the text?
No, because they're wrong. They're wrong.
But how can you prove that you're wrong? Maybe should you provide them to the House and Senate Special Committees on Intelligence, maybe? I don't know.
Wow. Well, you want to become my lawyer?
I'm throwing this out there, Jeff. I don't know. I mean, look.
I feel like no. I mean, I obviously. Let me just put it this way: my colleagues and I, and the advice that and the people who are giving us advice on this have some interesting conversations to have about this.
Yeah.
But just because they're irresponsible with material doesn't mean that I'm going to be irresponsible with this material.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. That's enough. That's enough now. Yeah. Yeah. He's not going to be irresponsible with the material. He's going to cause a huge uproar to get himself attention, but he's not going to be irresponsible with the material. He's sitting on this powder keg of highly classified stuff, and he's not going to share it with anybody. And when this guy from the Bulwark says, look, there's an easy way to prove all these guys wrong. And remember, this Tim Miller, he hates the Trump administration too. These guys are friends. They're on the same side. This Bulwark guy is basically begging Goldberg, hey, you've got the goods. They're up there on Capitol Hill saying nothing classified in this thing. You say there is. Easy way to sandbag these guys. You can really take them out now, Jeff. Come on. Hand over all of it and really make asses of them. To which Goldberg sighs and rubs his brow and huffs and says, well, what are you, my lawyer? I don't know. I've got a responsibility to the country. Do you believe Goldberg here? Ed?
No, I don't. But I also don't know what he has. Like, I really don't.
Yeah. I don't believe him either. Because if he were truly this great patriot and he's sitting on highly classified information that's very, very dangerous and he shouldn't have it, then give it the hell over to the proper authorities so they can review it and make your case. Don't say, oh, I've got all this stuff, but I'm not going to release it right now. I'm going to release just enough ahead of the annual hearings in the House and the Senate on national intelligence. Come on, guys. Were we all born yesterday? Is there a single... Serious question now. I don't mean to pat myself too much on the back, but I may end up hurting my arm in stretching to do so. Is there a single member of the media pointing out to you today, as I just have, that these two hearings were scheduled annually before the House and the Senate? Ed, you're the producer of this show. I'll ask one more time. Is there any member of the media anywhere, all the media you watch and read and consume? If there is, that's fine. I missed it. I consume a lot of media. Anybody point out that these hearings were scheduled, pre-scheduled annual meetings in the House and Senate, and all these people were booked and scheduled to show up. All these principals of the Trump administration booked, scheduled to show up at an annual meeting right before Goldberg's big story dropped. Has anybody told you that but this show?
As far as I can tell, no. No.
Where the hell's the journalism there? And isn't that a relevant fact? Isn't that an important point in this story? I think it is. Must I do everything? What is Signal? What's going on here? AP is now very interested in what is Signal. What do you mean, what the hell is Signal? They've been using it all along. A magazine journalist's account of being added to a group chat has raised questions about how highly sensitive information is supposed to be handled. Jeffrey Goldberg detailed a discussion that happened over the Signal messaging app hours before the strikes in Iran. You see, this is going to be about how people inside government are communicating with one another instead of the fact that somebody created a story out of thin air involving Jeffrey Goldberg somehow, for some reason. And they're going to get away from how Goldberg got this information and move on to making it sound like the Trump administration are a bunch of Keystone cops, which of course they're not. And again, Ratliff makes the point that the previous administration was using the same means of communication. There's still bad apples in this bunch. There's no doubt about it. I don't mean in the Trump administration, but I mean holdovers from previous. And there will be meetings to root out who did it. You may not hear who it is, but there will be meetings. I can assure you of that. All right, Relief Factor is 100%. I'm sorry, Z Factor, rather. The good people that make Relief Factor, they are the same, very, very same people that make those all-natural Z Factor. Christine takes both every single night. She loves Z Factor. In fact, literally, this happened last night. As we were in bed, I was doing a little reading, and she's starting to nod off. You can kind of... When she does not take Z Factor, she does not drift off to sleep like that. When she does, you can feel it. You can see it coming. She loves it. And so it not only helps her drift off to sleep, but it helps her get a good night's sleep. And so if you haven't tried it before and you're thinking, I just cannot get the rest I need, and I really don't want to take sleep medicine, why don't you give Z Factor a try first? It's all natural, and you don't wake up feeling groggy and all doped up like medicine can often make you feel, okay? Same people that make Relief Factor, check it out. 800-4-RELIEF. 800, the number 4-RELIEF. Get your Z Factor at relieffactor.com. Hey, glad to have you along on this midweek edition of the Chris Stigall Show, 7 o'clock in the East. Thanks a lot for watching this show on the Salem News Channel. I hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoy putting it on for you. We got another great hour. Jasmine Crockett, I don't know if you know much about this reprobate, but she's taken herself to an all-time low. Not just trying to stoke violence, physical violence, but now she thinks kicking disabled people is fun, too. I guess that's one way to try to win back the electorate. And also, Trump was busy yesterday with a flurry of new executive orders. This Goldberg thing with the Signal app continues to be a story. And we're going to dig into that this morning, too, with somebody who was part of Team Trump's national intel team in the first go-around, Victoria Coates. What about this Signal thing? Okay, let's talk about it. Is this a common way people in government talk to one another? And if so, is it a problem? Let's talk about it. We'll vet it. All coming up. Sit tight. You've heard me talk about Relief Factor and how so many people are enjoying a pain-free life because of it. And this includes my wife, Christine, by the way. I have this at the house. And I know people think, well, you take Relief Factor for real or you just talk about Relief Factor. No, we take it for real. My wife has been taking it now for just a few weeks, and she's had very limited mobility in one particular arm and shoulder. This is a 100% drug-free answer to pain. And so she started taking it, and 3 weeks in, folks, I'm not kidding. She just did this the other day to show me. She raised her arms above her head. She's thrilled. Relief Factor can do this for you, too. For just $19.95, they want you to try a 3-week quick start, just like Christine did, and see if it works for you the way it has for her. It fights pain naturally. It doesn't just mask the pain temporarily. It helps reduce or eliminate it. In fact, the longer you take Relief Factor, the more effective it is. Trying it out couldn't be easier with just a 3-week quick start. $19.95, that's it. That's less than $1 a day. All you have to do is make one phone call. 800-4-RELIEF. 800-4-RELIEF. Wherever you're hurting, every day you feel just a little bit better when you take some Relief Factor, and then you'll start living better. It's going to be better waking up every single day with Relief Factor. ReliefFactor.com. 800-4-RELIEF. 800-4-RELIEF.
Well, the numbers don't lie. Balance of Nature and the impact it's making every single day is astounding. You see the numbers for yourself on their website at balanceofnature.com. Listen to the stats from Balance of Nature, their worldwide success. You ready for this? More than 1,000 success stories reported every single month. Hundreds of thousands of customers worldwide. Millions of orders delivered each day. Billions. Yes, with a B, billions of fruits and vegetable supplements consumed by people who've decided to start living a better life. We take them at the house. I've got them up in the cabinet. Take them every day. There's only one number that's missing out of all of this, and that's you. Do what I did. Add yourself to these numbers. Start taking Balance of Nature. They're whole food supplements, like so many others around the world. And here's another number that'll get your attention. 35%. What is that? You use my name, Chris, as your discount code. You'll get 35% off, plus free shipping and a money-back guarantee. You got to use that discount code, Chris. 800-2468-751. And use the discount code Chris or order online, balanceofnature.com. Again, discount code Chris to get that 35% off plus free shipping.
Well, good morning. Thanks a lot, and welcome in to the Chris Stigall Show. I'm glad you joined us today. I know there are a lot of places you could be, and so the fact that you choose us to spend any of your morning is really deeply appreciated by all of us here. Very sincerely. Thanks so much. I was down there at NRB a couple of weeks ago in Dallas, and I always meet the best people at NRB. And one of these folks that I met for the first time, I've actually seen a number of times on television. If you watch any cable TV with any regularity, you've probably seen her before with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. She is their president and CEO, and she's often the face of that organization on their television commercials. Yael Eckstein joins us this morning. Yael, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show for the first time. Good morning.
Thank you so much. What an honor to be here with you, all the way from Jerusalem. We're far away, but it feels very close.
Yes, and I literally was just with you a couple of weeks ago, and I know Glenn Beck, who you do a lot of work with Glenn. The stories during that session that were shared, and maybe you could share some of them with the audience who weren't a part of it. We don't often get down into the granular of what's going on the ground where you are right now. And boy, when you hear it, it drives it home in a way that sort of the surface news coverage of this conflict just doesn't give you.
Definitely. I think in any war or conflict, you have to look at the stories on the ground to understand what's really happening. And that's really what the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews has been doing for 40 years here in Israel, and especially since October 7th. We don't get involved in the policies. We don't get involved in the government decisions. We're involved in feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, sheltering the poor, knowing where the bomb shelters are needed and doing everything to place them in the most at-risk locations, like outside of children's schools and at bus stops. And so what I see every single day is the human stories of faith and courage here in Israel, and the individuals who just inspire me so much by putting themselves at risk and doing anything in order to protect this holy land.
Yael, when people consider visiting, we have an ongoing campaign here on the show. The Israel Tourism Board sponsors some of our show and encourages people to go to goisrael.com and read more. When somebody says, should I travel there? What's your answer?
Wow. Well, I think the second you land in Israel, what I've heard from everyone, every single Christian and Jewish person that I know who's landed in Israel said, I've never felt so at home, even if it was the first time I've ever visited. There's something about Israel. It's our spiritual homeland. It's land that our soul is connected to. And on the news, it definitely looks very scary. But when you're here in Israel, what you feel is the joy and the faith and the resiliency. Israel was just voted the 8th happiest country in the world, and that's for 2025. We've been in war for over a year and a half, and we're still the 8th happiest country in the world. And so when you land in Israel, you see people enjoying life, studying God's word, sitting and drinking coffee, walking along the beaches of Caesarea, praying at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, going down to Be'er Sheba and doing planting of vegetables and helping to harvest the vegetables to bring them to people's tables here in Israel, as we grow around 90% of the produce that we consume. And so wherever you go, the Bible comes alive, and wherever you go, you feel life. You just feel this blessing of aliveness, even despite the threats all around us. So definitely, I would encourage anyone who feels connected to Israel and has that opportunity to visit Israel. But there are so many ways to be connected to Israel, even if you're not one of those lucky ones who are able to physically walk this land. And you can do that through listening to my podcast, for example, The Chosen People, through following what's happening on Israel through social media, on Instagram and Facebook. There are so many stories to be told about Israel of inspiration and hope that you don't have to physically walk here in order to tap into that.
I really hope to. As a Christian, I know many faith leaders that I read or follow, some with whom I worship. They have gone and say it's life-changing. I would really love to go. But just to double down on this question again of security and safety, it seems like a place maybe some people would be led to believe I go there and I'm sort of taking my life in my own hands by going to visit. You would disagree with that characterization, obviously.
Well, I believe that God has his plan for every single one of us. And people die in car crashes and people die in all different ways. There are lots of risks out there. There are lots of ways to be harmed. May all of us be protected by the angels of God that watch over us. But I definitely believe that in Israel, you are safe. In Israel, you are protected. There's a promise in Israel. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. And you feel that promise when you walk on the ground. So are there threats? Yes. We've been in our bomb shelter twice in the past 2 days as Houthis launched rockets at Israel. Yet Israel has the most incredible technology of the Iron Dome, and everything in Israel is dedicated to protecting the people. Something that's really incredible that not many people would think about, and many people when they hear it can't even believe it's true. But when there's an attack in Israel, a terror attack or any sort of attack or somebody in need, everybody on the street runs towards the place of attack and not away from it. When there's a bombing, for example, every single person in at least a mile radius runs towards the bombing in order to help the victims, in order to help each other, emotional, physical, whatever is needed. And that's something you only do if, God forbid, you thought your family might be in that attack. If you thought, God forbid, your family was in that attack, you would run towards the attack to help. If you thought it was all strangers, you would run the other way and protect yourself. And in Israel, everyone is family. It doesn't matter if you're Christian or Jewish, if you're American, or if you're in Israel. Everyone who is here is part of our family. And so there's a brotherhood that you feel when you walk down the street. And it's something that at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, that's the message that we give over, both when Christians are here and can look around and say, we pray for Israel, we love Israel, but also for those millions of Christians around the world who aren't able to physically walk on this holy soil. The fellowship is the voice of those Christians saying, Israel, you're not alone. We stand with you, we love you, we support you, and we continue to pray for you.
And Yael, it's important to note, I was just talking about this in my Bible study with a group of men last weekend, the Jewish people are not the only persecuted folks. Christians are certainly seeing it too. I mean, we've seen it in the Congo, we're seeing it in Syria. This is a very real issue to both Christians and Jews, hence the name of your organization. This is something Christians need to be much more aware of, frankly, than I think they are in North America. Can you speak to that?
Christians across the Middle East are being persecuted. They're being targeted and they're being killed. I mean, the number of Christians that were in Syria, 500,000 just not too long ago, is now around 8% of that number. The same thing in Iraq. You see it across the Middle East. And they're not only being kicked out, they're being targeted and killed. In Syria in the past few weeks, there have been over 1,000 Christians targeted and killed. Across the Middle East, we're seeing churches burnt down. We're seeing pastors who have their throats slit in the sanctuary. That Christians and Jews are in this together. And if we don't think so, then we have to just look at the words of the terrorists. They say, first, we're going for the Saturday people. Those are the Jews. And we're going for the Sunday people. Those are the Christians. First, we're going for the little Satan. That's Israel. And then we're going for the big Satan, America. And the terrorists don't hide it. And so I think that should bring us together, if nothing else. And so the work of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, we are very focused on helping persecuted Jews, but we're also focused on helping the Christian community. We help the Christian community inside of Israel. In Israel, we have the fastest and only growing Christian population in the entire Middle East. And the fellowship is there to help Christians around Christmas with food boxes in Jerusalem. And we're just helping our third hospital in Nazareth that helps the Christian population. And so we help persecuted Jews, we help persecuted Christians. We're looking for ways to help the Christians inside of Syria. And we won't stop. We won't stop praying. We won't stop acting, because we need to stand together now more than ever.
And Yael, are these people that are in sort of war-torn areas? Are these impoverished people? A little of both that your organization helps? I mean, we've seen the heart-wrenching commercials, I know. It seems often these are people in poverty. Are they always in the middle of conflict, or what are their circumstances?
So all of those videos that you see, if they're online or on television, none of those are staged. Those are just taking a video and going to help people like we do every single day, and being able to show you the people that the fellowship is helping. Last year, in 2024, the fellowship distributed over 3 million meals across Israel just through our soup kitchens. That's besides the hundreds of thousands of food boxes and Meals on Wheels that we distribute. We have soup kitchens located inside of the war zones in Kiryat Shmona, which is a town in Israel, the most northern town in Israel, which is located just a mile away from Lebanon, where Hezbollah terrorists are launching rockets at Israel. Our soup kitchen there had a direct hit by a rocket. And I personally went when I heard that soup kitchen was hit. I stood on the roof next door. I saw the hole right through the soup kitchen. And I said, by tomorrow, we are distributing the same amount of meals as we did yesterday. And within 24 hours, our soup kitchen was up and operating again. So we are both for times of war and for times of quiet, whatever the situation is, whatever emergency or crisis might arise. When there are people who are hungry, we will be there to feed them.
Yael Eckstein, just beautiful work. I appreciate getting to meet you for the first time. I hope this is the beginning of a long friendship. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews can be found at ifcj.org, and you can follow Yael on X at Yael Eckstein. Pleasure, ma'am. I hope we can have you back soon.
I'd be honored. God bless you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, we'll get to the bottom of it. I mean, we have a former deputy national security advisor to Team Trump on the show today, so I will continue to discuss this thing. I realize everybody has their theories, but I believe mine to be superior. And that is, the one nobody's pointing out, is that all of these people were gathered to testify before the House and Senate yesterday in a pre-scheduled annual meeting before House and Senate Intel committees. This story drops just before that hearing that's annually scheduled. You can't get all of these principal people in a room together at any other time. And certainly if something like this broke on any random strange day of a week where something wasn't scheduled on Capitol Hill, you see, you get members of Congress talking about stuff like this instead of, say, codifying tax cuts for you and me, or reducing the size of government, then all of a sudden the whole government apparatus on Capitol Hill is talking about Trump and national security and blah, 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 blah. And we're not talking about the stuff that, and by the way, they've got it. I mean, Team Trump's national security folks have still got it, and they're doing a kick-butt job. But
everyone would much rather you be talking about, obsessing about, and suggesting that somehow there's a problem with them, as opposed to doing the hard and heavy lifting and work of reducing the size of government and influence on your lives and your wallet. And it's important that we all remember that there are, of course, subversive actors, both outside and inside government, that would love nothing more than to see the Trump agenda fail. That's not new. That's not secret. So I don't think it takes a lot to get to a place where bad people trying to do bad things to show up the Trump administration in any way, shape, matter, or form they can to derail the national conversation and take away momentum. They are working on it day and night. This is like people that are in cybersecurity. I'm told their entire existence is to sit around imagining threats. And they come at them every day. People that are apparently in cybersecurity, I'm told, that maintain, high-level websites, financial institutions, and others, it's constant and round the clock. It's sleepless and tireless work, constantly warding off all the people that are trying to hack in to your system. Well, imagine that times who knows how much when you're talking about the federal government, holdovers from previous administrations, hostile actors, and media working in concert, talking with one another secretly, accessing meetings, accessing private conversations. It's whack-a-mole. It's virtually impossible. And the Trump team is, I think, doing better than they certainly did in the first term in trying to get this thing contained. But it's, I don't know, how do you contain? Can you hold water in your hand without it dripping through? It's, try as you might. You'd like to think that everybody inside the government is working for the people. No, they're not. Because if they were, they'd be on board an agenda that's actually trying to minimize government influence, taxation, regulation in your life, and giving you more of your own disposable income and more of your freedoms and a growth economy. That's what everyone you'd like to think who's in public service wants for you and me. But unfortunately, they want their day in the sun, they want their paycheck, they want their political power, and they don't really give a rat's ass about you and me. That's the sad reality about a lot of people in Washington, D.C., and that's still the case. Even though they did not win an election, they're still hard at work. And that's the key thing to always keep in mind. I think sometimes we get comfortable and think to ourselves, well, Trump won. Boy, he's really kicking butt and cleaning house. Nothing to see here. And then when something like this happens, people get mad because it's been 2 months of steady Trump's rolling, winning, kicking butt. Democrats are scattering. They don't know quite how to handle this. They're out screaming and yelling and acting like buffoons because they can't figure out a counter message. And now they've found a little road bump, a little wrench in the plan. Do you think this painting in Colorado was on purpose to make Trump look bad, Fast Eddie? Did you see this? What do you make of this painting? I mean, I'll grant you it's not a great painting, but I mean, I didn't think it was the worst painting I've ever seen of Trump. Trump, apparently Colorado State House hangs portraits of all the presidents painted by some person who painted a great one of Obama and the husk. And then they hung up this one of Trump, and Trump hates it. He hates it so much he commented on social media, and they took it down. Did you see it?
Yeah, I did. It's not the most.
Do you think
flattering.
She purposely painted it badly?
I could see that, yeah. Of course. Absolutely, yes.
It makes him look doughy or something, doesn't it? Kind of puffy. Looks like a Pillsbury or something.
Not flattering, no.
So they've taken it down. They've removed the bad painting. Beautiful look at the Windy City, Chicago, our great affiliate there, 560 AM. Man, do I love that town. It's just a shame Democrats have ruined it like every other city. I miss Chicago. My wife's from there. Got married in Cook County, incidentally. Can you believe that? My marriage certificate says Cook County. I didn't get out of there with that. And that's where we actually threw the wedding. Same thing. And I remember even back then, 25 years ago in June, you needed union stooges to do this and that. That town took us for a boatload of money even back then, and we got off cheap. It's just amazing. My mother-in-law still lives there, and the taxes she pays, it's such a wonderful city. I really love it, but you couldn't possibly pay me enough to move there. I don't know how people afford to even live there. Illinois does not get nearly the attention that it should.
L.A. and New York get all the attention for being whacked out left-wing cities, but I'm telling you, Chicago ain't. Those people, that is as corrupt as it gets. Hell, they're trying to regulate homeschool parents now to prove they're worthy to educate kids in the state of Illinois. That is one big communist state. Maybe worse than California and New York. Maybe. I'm prepared to say that. You people in Illinois know what I mean. Anyway, welcome in. Welcome back. Telephone number 855-STIGAL if you want to get in here. I have a great colleague and friend that we relied on a lot over the years. He writes at Red State. In fact, he's the big dog there, the front page contributor at Red State. And if you don't read his work, you should. If you don't follow him on X, you should. His name is Bonchie. I feature his commentary quite a bit on the Harumph Society, but he remains elusive. As a figure, he likes to hide. That's why when we put him up on the Salem News Channel, we just put a silhouette, because he doesn't want to reveal his true self. Bonch, you're kind of like a superhero. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Congrats on the new setup.
Yeah, thank you. You're somebody. In all sincerity, you take great pains to kind of keep to yourself. You go by a pseudonym. You don't show yourself up on cable news. You don't like that. You're developing quite a following on X, but your anonymity is important to you. True?
Yeah, I'd say that's true. I think I've kind of made the decision that I want to protect my family from all of the backlash and things that happen when you're a political commentator. So for as long as I can, I'm going to remain the way I am. So.
Yeah, because this swatting business is real. I got somebody ask me about that the other day. I guess that's now, sadly, what comes with the territory. Yeah. I mean, several of the guys that we interact with were swatted over the last few weeks, and so it's a bad deal. And it's sad to see how things are escalating. And you're looking at the stuff with Tesla being attacked and people being, harassed in the streets. And then you got, Jasmine Crockett telling people to go punch Ted Cruz. I mean, things are, it's good to laugh about it all, but it's also serious. And, it's the kind of thing that, you hate to see. Yeah, Bonchie contributes again at Red State. Bonchie Red State is his handle on X. You should follow him. It's always good stuff, and he writes great stuff, too. The thing about you as well, and people should know, you're a conservative guy, but you're not a homer. I mean, you're happy to call balls and strikes. That's what we've always liked about you, and that's why I thought it was an important time to bring you in, because Trump's been rolling without much incident. I think for the most part it's been very effective. And now, Shazam, and I just posted this morning on X because I don't really feel like anybody's mentioning the fact that we have all these principals in Trump's national intelligence team and defense team that are all summoned at a scheduled hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday. That's scheduled, an annual meeting for the House and Senate to discuss these issues. And lo and behold, Mr. Goldberg at The Atlantic drops this big signal bombshell story. I don't think the timing is coincidental, Bonchie.
Yeah, and the whole story, I think for one, it's, yes, it's bad that he got added accidentally, somehow nefarious, whatever, however you want to, speculate what happened. It's bad that he got put in this signal chat, but I also think it's being blown way out of proportion. And, I was thinking yesterday, we have seen more outrage from the press, from Democrats. There are calls for people to resign. Elizabeth Warren, Hakeem Jeffries, the House minority leader, called for Pete Hegseth to resign yesterday over this. We've seen more outrage of this than we saw over the Afghanistan withdrawal. Like, how many people did Hakeem Jeffries ask to resign over 13 American service members being blown up? Not due to, regular pains of war, but sheer political incompetence from the Biden administration trying to set up a victory speech on 9/11. I mean, it still makes me angry just thinking about how that whole thing played out. And, so we've got all of these people trying to get on their high horse and say that, this person needs to resign, and this is awful, and this is terrible, and this is the worst thing that's ever happened. And I think it's stupid. I think it's being pushed by people with no credibility. The White House has come out. You mentioned the hearing. They've come out and they've said under oath now, I believe Ratcliffe and Gabbard both said yesterday that there was no classified material shared in the chat. And so you're basically at the point where we're taking Jeffrey Goldberg's word for it, and I'm not willing to do that. If you know anything about that guy's history, you should not be willing to do that. So if he'd like to release all the rest of the text and, prove his claim, then sure, go ahead and do that. But for now, I'm not taking his word for it. And, you say I call ball and strikes, and that's true. And I think there were some mistakes here. I'm a little not very happy with Michael Waltz, going on Fox News and making all his excuses instead of just taking responsibility for it, because I think it perpetuates the story more than it helps.
I agree.
But, yeah.
Can I drill down on that for a minute, Bonchie? Bonchie's with us from Red State. Waltz was on with Laura Ingraham, and I watched this last night. I happened to watch it all, and Laura was not. I mean, I give her credit. She wasn't being a homer either. She was really pressing Walz on how the hell this Goldberg guy gets entered into a chat. Walz wouldn't throw anybody else under. He wouldn't say his staff did it. He said it stops with me, it rests with me, but then also said, I don't know Goldberg, never heard of him, don't know how he got there. So that's a very difficult I would rather he just say, like Ratcliffe said, look, I was given a directory, I was given signal, I missed, I punched in the wrong guy, Goldberg was preloaded in the thing. I mean, you do have to explain it. Someone has to explain how it happens, right?
Exactly. And if you know anything about Signal, I mean, this is an encrypted app. Jeffrey Goldberg did not break an encrypted app. He got added to the chat somehow.
Yes.
I mean, I'm positive of that. And so, to me, Michael Waltz is an interesting character because he's not very popular among MAGA circles because he was from the Bush administration. And so, there's obviously a level of suspicion that exists there already among, Trump's more hardcore supporters, and I understand why. I think this is a guy that worked for Donald Rumsfeld, so I understand why there is some suspicion there. And when you go on Fox News and you try to use, it's almost like he used Elon Musk as a shield. Like, I'm going to get Musk to come investigate this. Like, no, just tell it. Like it says in the chat, we've all used Signal and WhatsApp. It's going to say in the chat, so and so added so and so. Just tell us who added it. And so that's kind of my problem with this story. It's not that it's this major deal. It's not that it shows this extreme level of incompetence from the Trump administration that we're seeing, spouted in the press. It's just, I think the story would have died already had Waltz just come out and said, hey, somebody on my staff made a mistake. It's been handled. We've taken care of it. We're taking new precautions, and it's over. And instead you're getting, the story perpetuated. And I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, no, that is exactly my problem with it. This is not a scandal. It's not a huge story or a huge issue. It's just an accountability thing. And for some reason, when you say, I don't know who this Goldberg is, I have no idea who he is, I don't know how he ended up in the chat, but the buck stops with me, it doesn't square. And he could have killed this last night with Laura, and Laura properly kept pressing him on it, and he wouldn't. It was very evasive, and so it's problematic for Walz. But Trump says, I stand with Walz. Walz is my guy. I have noted, as you just said, a good number of people that listen to this show and post on X and respond to me say they don't trust Walz. Do you have reason to believe Walz is some kind of subversive or snake?
At this point, and I wrote the story up yesterday about this. At this point, I do think it was an accident. I am a little curious why somebody would have Jeffrey Goldberg under their initials. That's not the kind of thing you do with a person you don't know. You put them under their initials. I mean, that's typically something you do for a close friend or somebody you communicate with regularly. But, I think it's too obvious that this would have blown up into something big for Waltz to have done it on purpose. And so I don't think it was purposeful. I think it was a mistake. Maybe a staffer could have done it on purpose, and you never know. You look over the years of, the first and now the second Trump administration, there have always been people that have tried to subvert him. So it wouldn't surprise me if somebody did it on purpose. But for now, I'm taking the path that I think it was an accident. So let's wrap this story up and put a bow on it and stop talking about it. That's kind of what I want to see the administration do, instead of going on, Fox News and, doing the opposite, in my opinion.
Yes. Well, and what is clear, what is important to remember, and I was just saying this before you and I got on board here today, Bonchie, is that there are people still, as much as we've celebrated 2 months of Trump just steamrolling and Doge and the cuts and the aggressiveness and Democrats just flaming out, they don't know what to do, their heads are spinning, this story is a reminder that there are people actively trying to find soft spots in the administration, and that there are people actively, I believe still, inside the administration who will work with people like Goldberg to try to throw a wrench in the operation. These people still exist, and there's been so much offensive movement by Trump, and we've gotten so used to that in the last 2 months, I think we forget just how much harm some people still mean him.
Agreed. And I think you have to acknowledge, I think we should all acknowledge that, the past several months have been much better than the first term as far as leaks and stories like that. I mean, it's hard to remember now because it was so long ago, or at least it seems like so long ago. But I mean, it was multiple stories daily dealing with leaks in the first Trump administration. We're not seeing that, but this is, as you said, this is kind of the first time that the administration has been thrown back on its heels a bit, and they're having to kind of punch back and defend themselves more than be on offense. And so it's just a reminder that they've got to really keep things buttoned up. And I don't think this is a major story that's going to cause impeachment. I mean, I saw journalists suggesting impeachment over this, and I would just have to laugh. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I think in a week, no one's going to be talking about this, and so it's not the end of the world. A mistake is a mistake. I'd like to see them. I'd like to see Walsh just say it was a mistake and move on. But if he doesn't want to do that, he doesn't want to do that. But I do think. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I got to run, my friend, but I want to have you back a lot, and I hope everybody reads every word you write at Red State. Bonchie is also on X. Bonchie Red State. Follow him there. Thank you, Bonch. I always appreciate your time. Back in a minute. Let's go to Cleveland and talk to Tom. Tom, thanks for waiting. Glad you called in. Hi.
How are you, Chris?
Doing great, sir. How are you today?
I'm good. Hey, I got an interesting, I don't know, I was listening to you, learning like I always do. I had an interesting thought on this Goldberg goofball. Do you think, go with me for a minute, do you think these people that work for Trump are not idiots? They're not stupid. They've been around the block a few times. Do you think that possibly they could have set this guy up? Because I'm thinking, in Israel, Netanyahu's having some problems over there. Some people say he's not very popular. The war's dragging on. He's got problems with the Houthis. He's got problems with Iran backing him. Do you think that they leaked this to this guy on purpose to let him get it out in his rag of a paper or online paper, whatever it is, to kind of let the Houthis and Iranians know, hey, the United States is thinking about backing Israel even more, kicking the crap out of you two if you don't get yourselves in line and stop acting like idiots. That way, Trump's backing Netanyahu, not making him look like he's overstepping his bounds. People going crazy saying, look at this guy, he's crazy, he's going to start a third world war. But the Houthis and the Iranians get the picture. Oh, dang. This Trump guy's not messing around, and look, they're already making war plans to come after us. You think that's
so? You're positing that, and I'll hear it because none of us know for sure. You're suggesting that maybe Team Trump used this Goldberg, knowing he would go to print with this story, knowing he would print some of their exchanges to show solidarity with Israel and show the Houthis and Iranian-backed groups Trump's serious about taking them out.
Yes, I think that that's a possibility. I'm not saying for sure that's what it is, but that is a possibility. And this could be a side effect of, even if it was an accidental leak, this could actually be a silver lining in the cloud or a positive thing, because now the Houthis and the Iranians, I mean, they know Trump is serious, but if they think that our, national security team and everybody, Department of Defense and the Pentagon, they're all actually thinking about maybe putting war plans together in case they need to go in there and clean house, that it may give them the kick in the pants they need to maybe straighten up and stop sending all those rockets into Israel. And the Iranians may be thinking little self-preservation might be needed right now, and let's not kick the sleeping bear too much.
All right, Tom, I'll hear it. I appreciate the theory. You know, Iceman here on the show has a theory. He thinks that this is all Russia, Russia, Russia. We're back to Russia collusion. Is that what you said, Iceman? You told me during the break that you believe that it's Russia trying to thwart this Ukraine peace deal by making the U.S. look weak. Is that about right?
Yeah, something like that.
Or compromised?
They're going to frame it that way.
And Russia will use this as an excuse to back out.
More or less.
Is that okay? All right. I'm all for theories. People have a lot of them. All I know for sure is that this happened 24 hours before an annually scheduled meeting with all of the principals involved in that call. I don't think that's a small matter, in my opinion. Telephone number, again, 855-STIGAL if you want to weigh in. And you shouldn't go anywhere because I'll tell you, coming up in the next hour, I'm going to talk to a woman who I think knows this. Well, I don't think. I know she knows it. She's literally been in the room. She's been in skiffs. She's probably used Signal before. Wouldn't you bet, Fast Eddie? Victoria Coates is who I'm talking about. If there's somebody that actually knows this stuff, like literally been in the room for these kinds of conversations, it's Victoria. And she joins us right after the news here at the top of the hour. She was the former Deputy National Security Advisor to Donald Trump in his first term. So I think she's going to be able to answer a lot of great questions, like, is Mike Walls a trustworthy guy? How does a journalist accidentally get added to text chains in an app? Is this subversive? Is it purposeful? I'll throw all of these theories at her, and we'll see what she says coming up next. It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years. But now he has two brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell him about him, Bob.
Yeah, Chris, I can't begin to express how proud I am, obviously, of having my daughter there. Also, Dr. Geddes is just a wonderful addition to our practice. He is a classmate of my daughter Alexa's at Temple Dental School, and I have known Jared for about 7 years now. Getting to know Jared over the years, it was my wife Debbie and my daughter Emily who kept telling me, you have to hire Jared. You have to hire Jared. He's going to be a superstar. Jared went off to USC, did a 1-year residency after his year at Temple. He came back and he worked for about a year in a practice in New Jersey. And after, again, my wife and daughter beating my brains in, I got the message and I hired Jared, and he's been a great addition to Williamsburg Dental.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. Do you know a generation of children in El Salvador are lost to malnutrition? And the only way to a better future is through a school feeding program. I hope you'll join me in saving lives with food for the poor. Hi, I'm Chris Stigall, and when you click the Feed Their Future banner at my website, chrisstigall.com, your gift of $100 will provide a child in El Salvador with daily school nutrition for an entire year. Just $100 for an entire year. Call 855-330-4673. Make your most generous gift right now, because the nutrition these kids get in school, it's often their only meal of the entire day. Food for the Poor's school nutrition program effectively addresses malnutrition and increases school attendance too. Now, your donation is going to support local farmers who produce nutritional supplements as well, and you're needed, critically needed, to improve children's nutrition in places like El Salvador. Your gift will allow them to focus on learning rather than worrying about their next meal today. You have the power to feed a child for an entire classroom for an entire year. Click the blue banner at chrisstigall.com. 855-330-4673 is the telephone number. Give that gift of $100 to feed these children's future. chrisstigall.com. Click on that blue banner or 855-330-4673 today.
I am thrilled that we made friends some time ago with Victoria Coates, who is the vice president of the Catherine and Shelby Cullum Davis Institute for National Security and Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation. She is also the former deputy national security advisor to President Trump in his first term, and she has authored a best-selling book called The Battle for the Jewish State, How Israel and America Can Win. Her name is Victoria Coates, and it is a thrill to have you back, Victoria. Good morning.
Chris, great to be with you.
Do you mind if I monopolize your morning a little bit? This may take 2 segments. I've got so much to talk with you about. Thank you for your time.
No, I'm happy to do it. I have what my mother used to refer to as a warm, needed feeling today.
Let's dive into this. You were in the room for so many of these things. You literally know what national intelligence is all about. Here's my first big 30,000-foot question. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as an annual meeting to assess global threats on Capitol Hill. I didn't know there was such a thing. But apparently yesterday, that thing was on the books and scheduled. So every principal player in national security in the cabinet was already scheduled to be there to testify. And lo and behold, shazam, 24 hours before this annual scheduled meeting, this big story drops about Stigall. Now, is there anything to that? Can we start there? Because I didn't know yesterday this was a previously scheduled hearing.
Yes, and it's easy to know when this testimony is going to happen because the Director of National Intelligence, who's now Tulsi Gabbard, each year the office, the ODNI, puts out an threat assessment. So there's a publication that occurs, and that came out last week. And the following week, the principals, the Director of the CIA, the Director of the FBI, the ODNI, they all go up and they testify before Congress. And it's kind of a marathon day of both open and closed testimony. So everybody knows this is going to happen. And lo and behold, this sensational Atlantic article drops the day before all of this is supposed to happen. And, you know, what Jeffrey Goldberg alleges in this article is sensational. Of course, everybody was talking about it. It was like catnip for Washington. It had all the big names. It had emojis. It had the Houthi. The story was everything. And so, it caused this massive tempest in a teapot. But, as little time has gone by and we're starting to collect some actual facts, I have a lot of questions about how and why this went down when it did.
Good. So we'll unpack all of those one by one, Victoria. So you do think I'm onto something, that this was well known and well timed for this event of these meetings, these hearings? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Goldberg's had this stuff, some of it for 6 weeks. And, what he could have done the moment he figured out what was going on is he could have picked up his phone and typed into it, "This is Jeffrey Goldberg. I'm a reporter from The Atlantic. Why am I on this text thread?" He did not do that. He lurked.
And he still could have he still could have written his story, but just fessed up to it early, right? And still written the story that, hey, they screwed up and put me in a text. So let's get to how he got in there. So, first of all, in your capacity, when you were in the administration, were you using this thing called Stigall? What do you know about the use of it?
Yeah, we were not. We were given very strict marching orders by NSC Legal that texting was not permitted. And we did not have any capacity on our phones. It was actually sort of a joke because people could text us. Generally, foreign diplomats will try to WhatsApp you, and you could see it flash up and then it would vanish and you had no way to respond and the person thought you were ghosting them. So it was a problem. We talked about it a lot, about trying to develop our own platform. The problem is the NSC is covered by as the Vice President's office is covered by the Presidential Records Acts. So theoretically, you're supposed to preserve, any kind of deliberative work discussions. You can text on your home phone to, get an Uber or do logistics or whatever. But for substantive deliberations, you're supposed to capture those for the National Archives, and we haven't come up with a good system for that. And I don't know if the group that this was created were taking screenshots. There are various ways you can get around that. We never found a good fix for it, but it was a problem, Chris, because, we communicate in a different way in the now second quarter of the 21st century than we did 50 years ago when a lot of the security protocols were put into place. The ability of people to be in the same room even is somewhat limited when you travel the way these individuals do. And, you don't want to commit a ton of stuff to writing. You do want to be able to communicate in real time. And so, if this does anything, if it inspires us to get a more secure, and Signal's come out today and said, actually, we're perfectly secure, so we could look at that again. But we probably should have a homegrown capacity to do this. But it has been a problem.
Victoria Coates is the former Deputy National Security Advisor to Donald Trump in his first term. What's the likelihood? There are people who are Trump enthusiasts, voters, MAGA supporters, supportive of this agenda, who now conclude it's dirty pool by someone internally. And some are even pointing at Mike Walls and say Mike Walls shouldn't be trusted. What do you say to those people?
Well, I would be cautious because I'm old enough to remember what happened in the first 29 days of the first Trump term when I was serving on the National Security Council staff, and they went after General Flynn. And if you look at the playbook that was used against Mike, it was the same thing. It was a procedural situation. They tripped him up. He was subsequently, after going through hell, he was exonerated, I guess is the word I'm looking for. He was found not guilty of lying to the FBI. But that was years after he had been forced to resign. And the bigger picture there, beyond the personal tragedy of what was done to Mike, was the disruption to the president's National Security Council staff. Not that we were the end all or be all, but the NSC is the president's tool to implement his policies. They sit in the White House. They are personal aides to him. Those of us who were high-level political appointees or commissioned officers, which is another kind of just rank thing. It's a protocol game in Washington, and it's part of that. But without a powerful NSC, the president can't get the departments and agencies to do anything. They will just run amok on their own. So taking the NSC out at its knees early on is a great way to put a president in a box and prevent them from really robustly implementing their agenda. They did it to General Flynn, and I think they're trying to do it to Colonel Waltz now. And so,
and to be clear, Donald Trump, Victoria, to be clear, said yesterday unequivocally, I stand with Mike Waltz. He's a good man. This is much ado about nothing. The strike on the Houthis was still devastatingly effective. We're moving on. Is that about right? Is that the way to handle this?
Yes, I think he's learned from what happened with General Flynn, and he wants to stand by Mike Waltz. And, one can have differences of opinion with Mike, but he has served extremely honorably. Yeah, he was a Green Beret with my heritage colleague, Rob Greenway, and has, a very long history of dealing with national security issues. And so if the president is satisfied with him for continuity's sake and for getting this new administration up on his feet, I think he should stay in his seat and not be derailed by what looks to me like a pretty coordinated hit job.
And so let me close with that question, and then if we can hold you over for another segment, I want to talk to you about some other national issues of the day.
There's something else going on?
Oh, yeah, there are a couple of other things. The idea that he was set up, Mike Waltz was set up, that there's someone on his staff or inside in coordination with Goldberg. What's the likelihood there?
It's always possible. I've heard a couple of names tossed around. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. One of the issues with the NSC is you do have careers that are detailed over because the budget is so small. You can't pay the politicals as much as you might want to. And, that is possible. And so I think we need to take a real close look at everybody's phone. And we did that repeatedly. I mean, I handed my personal phone over. You don't have to do that. I did it repeatedly just because I had nothing to hide. I'm like, look, you can go through it and see if I did anything untoward. If I did, I'll pay the price. But I don't think I did, and I never had. So that should probably be done, and see if anybody's been talking to Jeffrey Goldberg.
And as for Goldberg, you believe his responsibility should have been, hey, guys, I shouldn't be in this chat. He can still write his little story about it if he wants, but if he were really on the up and up about this, he would have said early, I'm privy to stuff I shouldn't be. Go ahead and write your story about it, fine, but tell them early, right? Don't sit on it.
If you're an American and you value American national security, yeah, that seems to me like a kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. Victoria Coates is with us, and she has authored a very important book called The Battle for the Jewish State, How Israel and America Can Win. I want to ask her about that. I want to ask her about the Russia-Ukraine deal that looks like it's coming closer, and maybe how this signal thing, I have some people theorizing that maybe this signal thing is to derail that. She's Victoria Coates, former Deputy National Security Advisor for President Trump. She's authored a wonderful book called The Battle for the Jewish State, and she was wonderful enough and generous with her time to hang around with me for some real news other than the Signal app scandal stuff. So let me tackle this possibility that Russia is coming to the table for a ceasefire. Victoria, how optimistic are you? And by the way, some have posited that the reason this Signal app came up is because Russia's up to no good here, trying to make the national security team look bad in advance of a peace talk. What do you say?
Well, that's always possible. The Russians are not good actors. They're not our friends in this. But President Trump's been very clear he wants to get to a resolution of the Ukraine war. We're more than 3 years into this. It's become a meat grinder. I don't see any, despite a lot of rhetoric coming out of Brussels, any resolution out of our European allies to actually get to the point of winning this war. They're the ones who would have to do it. And, we're about to publish a paper at Heritage, Chris, and I know think tank papers are what dreams are literally made of. They put you to sleep. But this one is pretty interesting. It's about the real commitment of the Europeans to their defense spending over the last 10 years. And after the United States, we're at 3.5% of GDP, largest economy in NATO. Clearly, we're fueling the whole thing. The next five, Germany, UK, France, Italy, and Canada, are either clinging by their fingernails to 2% or are well beneath it. And we simply can't get to a positive resolution of Ukraine in terms of what you would think of as traditional victory. Well, that's the case. That's not our fault. That's their fault. So if President Trump is being pragmatic, wants to get to a negotiated settlement that will end the killing, a lot of people are invested in this war machine. They want the fighting to continue. They want those fat contracts to go on. They are going to try to trip him up, but they made some real material progress for the first time yesterday. Not the beginning of the end, maybe the end of the beginning towards this grain deal, which will allow shipping to start again through the Black Sea. This is a good thing for Ukraine. They can start to export food again, which is helpful. And it's good for Russia. They're going to stop taking such a pounding to their Navy. So that was a fairly easy thing to get to. Biden couldn't do it, but Trump did. And now we'll see what happens with the 30-day ceasefire.
Meanwhile, in Israel, evacuation orders and attacks on the Gaza Strip. And I found a story that I thought rather interesting, actually, from the Jerusalem Post. I incorrectly said Reuters earlier. Palestinians protest Hamas rule in Gaza Strip. I don't know how real this is. They say hundreds of Gazan citizens marched carrying white flags, calling to end the Hamas rule and saying hand over the Israeli hostages. How real is that? I mean, I must confess, I've always been under the impression that most Palestinians are perfectly happy to be ruled by Hamas. Maybe I'm wrong. Is there real resistance inside Gaza against Hamas?
The short answer is maybe. Now, it may be that Hamas wants us to think that the Palestinians in Gaza are united in their support of Hamas, and that certainly has a ring of truth to it. They haven't expressed much of this before, but the other thing is, Chris, they're not given a choice. Everybody gets all up in arms about President Trump's offer to the Palestinians that they go to another location for resettlement and a better life. Well, they don't have that choice right now. They can't leave. The Egyptians won't let them in. And that's not because of the Egyptians' dedication to the Palestinian cause. It's because they know who they are. They won't even take the women and children. So they are trapped, in essence, right now. And I have to wonder, I mean, the Israelis have already dispatched a couple of planes to Romania, some other countries that have significant Palestinian populations, Belgium, for example, Panama, Canada. All these countries have Palestinian communities who might be willing to take groups of people. And 2 million people is a lot of people, but when you start to break it down into smaller groups, you could make a dent if they would like to leave. And so, that is an option that hasn't been presented to them. If this protest is real, maybe we could work with that.
Yeah. So you're a little dubious of the reporting then, maybe, that's real.
Well, one of my Israeli friends said they might be protesting because they haven't killed us effectively enough. And that's a little dark, but yes, it is possible. But let's see. I mean, I'm just not discounting the possibility.
With about 20 seconds to go, could you grade Team Trump foreign policy, national security at this moment? We're only 2 months in, but could you give it a grade?
Oh, I'll give them an A. I mean, they've gotten hostages out. They've made progress toward the Ukraine deal. That we haven't had a sort of an external crisis with China, for example. Great meeting with Prime Minister Modi. I met with the Indian ambassador yesterday. We have a template for that relationship for the next 4 years. I think it's going great. And I think if we can not have one of these kind of hit jobs trip them up, great things are down the road.
It's The Battle for the Jewish State, her book. Victoria Coates, former Deputy National Security Advisor to Donald Trump. Thank you, Victoria, so much. We want to have you back. We're going to do a long-form discussion one of these days. I appreciate you. Yeah, even members of the team are starting to notice. BK said to me, no kidding, just last week, he said, Stigall, I'm noticing some of your suits are starting to look a little baggy. I can see in your face you're starting to lose weight. That's the best compliment guys can get, is you look like a slob. I appreciate that, BK. The point is, I'm losing weight pretty dramatically, as a matter of fact. And how am I doing it? People have been asking me this. And I tell them it's our sponsors at PhD Weight Loss. And one of the things you get immediately after that is, okay, what's that about? And I said, maybe I'm not doing the best at always explaining exactly what it's about and how it works. And so I said, what we should do is invite a woman who created the thing. I mean, she's literally the brains behind the outfit that has helped countless people in this audience, as well as some of my colleagues. Mike Gallagher has lost a tremendous amount of weight with them. Seb Gorka, who, is part of the national security team right now in counterterrorism in the White House. This guy looks as fit as I've ever seen him. I've known him now for a few years. He looks great. He and his wife, Katie, have been on this program. And they were singing the praises of Dr. Ashley Lucas a year ago, before I ever knew anything about her or the program. And so when we started this show in January, and they said, Stigall, you ought to try it, I said, okay, I will. I've had amazing success with it. 3 weeks on it, I am down today 15 pounds. 15 pounds in 3 weeks. And I can tell you by the end of this week and early next, I'll have more to report. I can tell you that much. So, the woman behind it all is Dr. Ashley Lucas, and I'm thrilled to say she joins us this morning. Doctor, it is a thrill to see you in person on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Same, Chris. Thanks for having me, and a huge congratulations to your amazing success. What do you think about that?
Thank you very much. You know what? It feels tremendous. You can feel it. When you start to get to 10, 15 pounds, that's when you can start to physically feel it. A little more energy, a little less pressure on the joints and the whole thing. That's the best part of it.
Yeah, that's great.
Let me ask you about the everybody wants to know, okay, what's the story? What's the deal? What's the angle? I mean, if you could 30,000 foot it for people, everybody's different. People, metabolize different. People process things differently. But what's your secret to this?
Quite a few things. Well, so the first thing is, I don't think most people realize that the belly fat keeps us fat. Your belly fat is active and it's secreting hormones that cause you to be hungry, that slow your metabolism, that make you not want to move throughout the day. It's kind of like a tumor. So everything we do at PhD is to attack that belly fat. And you've probably noticed with yourself that that area is starting to reduce. So that's number one. Yes. Number two, we need to make sure that we're consuming the right type of food at the right time. We never count calories. I have no idea how many calories our clients are consuming because it's so much more complicated than that. I mean, you have never heard the word calories, right, Chris?
Not once.
Yeah. Yeah. Our bodies we're more complicated than just calories in and out. So we have to understand what our body can tolerate, what it isn't really doing well with, and manipulate that. Timing is important. And then I think 80% of any change comes from the mind, the mental, emotional habits, behaviors. For a lot of people, not everyone, it's an addiction recovery process. So it's unfair if we just think about, oh, you got to eat less or move more or take these injections. We're such a bigger picture than that. So implementing a metabolic change and getting the body to burn fat for fuel that feels good, no hunger, no cravings, no food noise naturally, and then really working with each individual from a behavioral standpoint allows for us to see really great and quick, effective success.
Dr. Ashley Lucas is the founder. She's the owner of PhD Weight Loss, a client and sponsor, and a program that I am personally on at the moment, and at least 15 down. I believe I'm more down. But Tim has told me, and this is key, you don't want me on the scale every day. You want me focused on, leading my life, not measuring every single day. Am I up, am I down? That's really not ultimately the goal, is it, to constantly, obsessively step on a scale?
No, I mean, we like it maybe once a week so we can see if everything's working for your body. But beyond that, it just creates needless anxiety. I hate food trackers, where it shows us if we have a calorie deficit. Oh, I really want people to understand their body's cues. And when we give the body the right food at the right time, your body will start to speak to you in the correct way and you can start listening to it. And we find people say that they have freedom from food. They feel liberated. And it's really great when you don't have hunger. Like you said, your joint pain reduces, you sleep better, and those things happen really quickly. We have clients with type 2 diabetes who can see huge improvements and often reverse the quote unquote chronic progressive disease within just a number of weeks. So it's pretty miraculous how the body actually works for you when you're giving it the food that actually supports your metabolism.
Here's the truth. And over the years, as I've gained weight, snoring is a thing, and Christine, my wife, has pointed that out. And what she has noticed instantly, and she's commented on it several mornings, you didn't snore again last night. You didn't snore again last night. I'm clearly one of those guys that as I put on weight, that exacerbates that snoring thing. And when I lose it and I'm eating better, it goes away. Now, I know that's not the case for everybody who snores. There are other things for some people. But in my case, it's just from taking in all the wrong stuff and putting on weight. That went away. That's a huge benefit and probably better for my sleep, too.
Oh, man, so much. We see people with severe sleep apnea make huge improvements. It's like you said, Chris, reducing inflammation and then getting that pressure off of the chest, the throat, and the face where a lot of men carry it. So you are not alone, and this is super common. So this is something that I tell people a lot who have busy schedules, Dr. Lucas. This is something that if you think to yourself, I don't have time to overthink what I'm eating. I gotta go. I got places to be. What I love about the program too is it's extremely helpful that you take most of the thinking, if you want, out of it. I mean, you got to be conscious of what you're doing and learning, but you don't make it hard to follow. You're not in the kitchen. You're not spending tons of time driving yourself nuts about it. That's what I really like, personally. Yeah. We make it as easy as possible, as simple as possible. We take out all of the guesswork, like you said, and guide you on exactly what to eat, breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner, whatever you're consuming, takeout, dining out, we help you. So you have a very, very clear plan. I think we spend a lot of wasted time doing things that don't work. So if you are really busy, like the majority of our clients, then we will actually give you more time throughout the day because you're just doing the one thing that actually works. You get to collapse time and you'll feel better, have better energy, so you can live that busy lifestyle and it feels much more easy. So yes, we have created this for people who don't like to cook, who have hectic lifestyles. You can do it. There's no excuses around that.
Now, what I really appreciate that you've done, because this is a new show nationally, and you were so good to come on and become one of our sponsors and allow me to do this program. But your generosity knows no bounds, because you even said that people that listen to this show, you're doing something for them that you don't do for any other show right now, and I'm grateful. If people listening to this and you and I talk and call and take advantage of this program, you're going to help them out with a discount on it, too.
That's right, yeah. If you fully commit, you'll get 15% off of your entire program and a guarantee where we support you. If you don't hit your target weight within the estimated number of weeks, then we'll continue to coach you for free until you do. This program works and it's amazing, and it's empowering to know that you can do this with the right tools. You don't need medications. You don't need anything wild. It's just taking you back to the root cause of why you've experienced weight gain and teaching your body how to work for itself again. It's really amazing, and I'm super grateful for the opportunity.
Listen, it works. I mean, I'm living testament. It works. I put on clothes this morning. I put on a suit this morning I haven't worn since November because, frankly, I got a little too big for it. But I'm back now, and the belt loops are tightening. It's the most fun. It's just so satisfying, and to not be starving, and to know you're getting healthy. Here's the number, 864-644-1900. 864-644-1900. If you call, you just heard Dr. Ashley. She said 15% off if you commit to this program, which don't tell the other people and the other shows, but no other member of any audience but this one gets that discount. So 864-644-1900. Tell them you heard Chris and Dr. Ashley talking about the program, and you get that 15% if you commit. I am just thrilled to have met you because I saw, as I said, a number of listeners to Seb's show and Gallagher's show. We were on a cruise last year, and they had them all come up on the stage at the cruise and take a picture together. And that's when I said, oh, this is something. I mean, dozens of people on this cruise all have lost dramatic sums of weight with your program, Dr. Ashley. So thank you for including us.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm excited for you, Chris.
MyPhDweightloss.com. MyPhDweightloss.com or 864-644-1900. Thanks a lot, Dr. Ashley. Our telephone number is 855-STIGAL, 855-784-4255. Let's go to Raleigh and talk to Ken, who's been very, very patient this morning. Ken, thanks a lot for your call. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. I was glad when the classic congressional hearings were going on and they were trying to bait the Trump team about admitting that this was the Signalgate thing was a major disaster, and they all said no. I would have also responded, when Biden's Secretary of Defense was AWOL for almost a week, or when Hillary was doing her private service server in a bathroom. Those were major disasters.
Yeah, isn't that funny how those things have gone away? The fact that we had a woman who was the Secretary of State maintaining her own private server. Like, shouldn't you want to talk about national security dilemmas? Chinese hacking into that thing, which we're pretty confident they did, by the way, right?
And if I may, I think you'd appreciate this. If Rush, our mutual friend Rush, he would probably say, say, can you see? Maybe Colonel Vindman is still in the Signal app.
So you're pretty confident there are people on the inside still that set this up, if you were to assess it. Is that your feeling on it?
Absolutely, especially when you factor in the timing.
Yeah. No, I agree with you completely. By the way, can you correct me on something? Is it people? I've heard some people say Raleigh. Some people say Rolla. How do you say it properly, Ken?
Well, I'm from Montana, so I probably don't count, but I've lived here for 20 years near Raleigh.
Raleigh. Okay, that's how they say it there. Raleigh. Okay, I just want to make sure I don't irritate people needlessly. What takes you from Montana to Raleigh?
I didn't have the mineral or timber rights in Montana.
Oh, wow. So you excavate, you drill? Is that what you do?
No, I became an electrical engineer, and I did sales and marketing for big data centers and stuff. So I flew around the world for 20 years, and the lakes. Well, the difference between the Montana lake and the North Carolina lake is mine doesn't freeze.
I want to make you an honorary harumper. You sound smart, Ken. I like you. Hang on just a second. We're going to get your email. I want to make you an honorary Harump Society member, all right? Trump was busy yesterday signing more executive orders. Those of us who are concerned about election integrity. You know, it is kind of striking. Trump won, I believe, every state where voter ID was required. And in every state where voter ID was not required, he did not. Is that a coincidence? Cut 1193 from yesterday. Take a listen.
Lastly, sir, we have an executive order for your attention on the very important subject of election integrity. We believe that this executive order is the farthest reaching executive action taken in the history of the Republic to secure our elections. Among numerous other aspects of this executive order, this is going to cut down on illegal immigrants on the voter rolls, ensure that the Department of Homeland Security and the data that they have available is being fully weaponized to ensure that illegal immigrants aren't voting. This will include a citizenship question on the federal voting form for the first time. This executive order instructs the EAC to cut federal funding to states that don't take reasonable steps to secure their election. This calls on the Department of Justice to vigorously prosecute election crimes, particularly in states that we don't believe are in compliance with federal law around election integrity. I could go on and on for a while, sir, but compliance with National Election Day rules, cracking down and investigating and prosecuting foreign interference in our elections, revoking President Biden's Executive Order 14019, which essentially weaponized government to corrupt and pollute our election process. There's a lot in here, but we believe that these are very important steps that we need to be taking as an administration at your direction to ensure that our elections are as secure as they possibly can be.
Okay. And so election integrity, obviously critical. Look, I will just point out to you that my fear is that the massive turnout, the thunderous turnout for Trump in November may not materialize in the midterms. I talked to you about this at the end of the show yesterday. We saw in a special election in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania yesterday, a pretty big stunner. Fast Eddie, is this a canary in the coal mine kind of a moment? A pretty ruby red area of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and a guy that we know pretty well from my show while we were doing it exclusively in the Philadelphia area. Josh Parsons is his name, and he was the county commissioner in Lancaster. He just lost this special Senate race to a Democrat in a place that Trump won by 15 points. That tells me, I don't have to tell you, Democrats are highly, highly motivated to go out and kick butt again, Fast Eddie. Yes?
They absolutely are, Chris. This is a failure on the PAGOP's part. As I last saw the count, I think it's less than 500 votes that Parsons is losing by currently.
Yeah, I don't bring a special Senate Pennsylvania race up to bore you with it. I bring it up as a warning. I want it to be a warning. Democrats are fit to be tied. They want power back, and they are waiting. If there's a dog catcher election coming up in your community, the Democrat is going to pour their heart and soul into winning it right now because they want to get even. They are mad as hell at the victory you gave Trump and Congress in November. And so the fight doesn't stop, and I do think we tend to kind of kick back and rest on our laurels, and I'm just telling you, state GOP people, county GOP people, the organization, the turnout has to happen. Election integrity is important, but turnout has to happen, and Trump's not on the ballot to drag people out to vote in special Senate elections in your state. You're going to have to work. Trump isn't going to be there to block and tackle for us again. Meanwhile, the Democrat strategy, apparently, make fun of guys in wheelchairs. Jasmine Crockett, 1178.
We in these hot-ass Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot-ass mess, honey. So yes.
You know, I did the Alex Marlowe podcast yesterday. Alex's theory is that she's a plant on our side. He believes she's actually a paid Republican operative to go out there and steal headlines for Democrats, that she's the front runner. I don't know, but yeah, she defends it, by the way. She's perfectly comfortable with calling Greg Abbott, who's in a wheelchair, the governor of Pennsylvania, Hot Wheels. All right, I'll let that stand. LGBTQ activist teacher and trans husband house minor teen girl in Colorado. This is a stunning story from the Daily Wire. A teacher in Colorado and her trans-identifying male husband. Let me write that in English. A lesbian teacher and her lesbian girlfriend pretending to be a man have effectively abducted a 17-year-old girl from school who also wants to be a male. That's what's going on in some public schools across the country. Public school teacher and her lesbian girlfriend, now pretending to be a man, take a 17-year-old student into their custody against the parents' custody. Now, again, we're talking about a 17-year-old, so I understand, willful teenagers and all of that. But this is the kind of stuff that they're committed to. I mean, they're going to die on the hill of this kind of stuff. Judges, defending drag shows and insisting they continue on. It's a strange strategy the Democrats have, I'll tell you that, but they are mobilized, highly mobilized. So be forewarned. We may roll our eyes at Jasmine Crockett, but right now I think they want it more than we do. So that's a wrap for another Chris Stigall Show podcast. Thanks for committing to it, listening to it all the way through. You're a fighter. I like that about you. Hope you'll leave it a 5-star review and a written review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'll see you next time here on the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.